Today, we are reporting the death of John McCain. He died yesterday in Arizona as he lost his battle with brain cancer. As I'm sure you know, he was a long-time politician in politics for 31 years, since 1987 until yesterday, which was his death. He was a senator, he was a House of Representatives, he was in the House of Representatives, and he was even a presidential contender running for president, securing the Republican nomination against Barack Obama. McCain started life off in military school where he was a little bit of a rebel. He was actually born at Coco Solo Naval Air Station in Panama to Naval Officer John S. McCain Jr. If you don't get what I'm saying there, it was that his father was a very, very important. He was the commander-in-chief in the Pacific, really, for the U.S. during the Vietnam War, and a very important person in the United States Army. That'll be something worth keeping into assignment. He was not the best, but he was not the best student. He came in actually 894th out of 899 in his class. He was a little bit of a rebel, not always the best rule follower. And I guess you could kind of apply that to his political career as well, if you're looking at it the wrong way. So then he moved on into the military, which was kind of like what he's always wanted to do since his father and his grandfather were in the military. He was for a long time. He's just part of a military family. It is definitely probably one of the most transformative times in John McCain's life that really kind of cemented his status as someone with great amounts of character. So he was starting in the Navy. He was working in the Vietnam War. He was a fighter pilot there, and then all of a sudden he kind of crashed. He crashed down, and he was shot down by the Vietnamese. He stayed at the Hanoi Hilton, very infamous hotel, where they tortured and beat him up. He came home with 2 broken arms and a broken kneecap. He was just horribly abused there by the North Vietnamese. But here's the thing. Actually, he could have gone out like 3 years instead of 5, because one of the things was the North Vietnamese decided they would let him go because his dad was such a big shot in the military. He said, "Nope, I'm staying. I'm not leaving until all my guys leave," which to me, and really to anyone, is something that's probably going to be, it's very admirable to do. There's no doubt about that, and really kind of cemented his status as a really hero, because he was on front pages of newspapers as he moved into his political career. Once in the Senate, though, McCain, he did, one of the first things he did was get embroiled in the corruption scandal. Not very good. He was one of the Keating Five who, after receiving $112,000 of contributions, political contributions from a banker by the name of Charles Keating, he was one of the first that Keating contacted to stop the bank from being seized, his bank called Lincoln, from being seized by the government. So that was not very good. He also then went on to, and by the way, he was in the far minority in this decision, vote against MLK Day as being a national holiday, which is a little bit sus there in my opinion. But of the rare benefits that John McCain did bring to the table, one of the things that he was very good about was just doing the minimum, which was very good. He did the minimum in terms of just decency, which was good. He bucked his party after 9/11 and opposed the use of torture, which, I mean, talk about the minimum. He was literally tortured. If you'd vote for torture, that would be insane. He also supported the supported the release, of the Senate torture report to the public, and also urged the Senate to reject the confirmation of CIA Director Gene Haspel, who oversaw torture. So that was something that he did fairly consistently throughout his career, was rebuke torture. And I did mention the corruption scandal. He did pass a relatively weak bipartisan campaign finance bill with Russ Feingold, the liberal senator from Wisconsin, called McCain-Feingold. So good for him there. He did try to make good on his mistakes, but the corrupt Supreme Court just was like, oh, that relatively weak campaign finance bill, gotta go. It's gotta go. It's too much for us. Trust me though, when I say the minimum, I do mean the minimum. Arguably, people would say that the Iraq War and the Vietnam War both had some similarities. They were relatively unnecessary. and they led to a lot of unnecessary lost lives of Americans. And as I just literally just told you, John McCain was tortured in the Vietnam War. So what did he do once 9/11 happened? He was one of the most loud and most vociferous supporters for the Iraq War. Not very good. So apparently within hours of 9/11, McCain, who's a Vietnam War hero, used his Vietnam War hero bona fides to push the war on the American people. And he was characterized as one of the loudest supporters of the war outside of the George Bush administration, which is not very good. And he even was on an aircraft carrier, according to the New York Times, the Theodore Roosevelt in the Arabian Sea, yelling to a crowd of sailors and airmen, "Next up, Baghdad." So he was one of those people who was pushing this war, even though he experienced the same useless suffering and just awful death that those soldiers were about to experience in Iraq, which was very unfortunate, to say the least.
It's well documented that we have, for quite a long time now, known where the real problem is in the Middle East. And in fact, the president adequately described it as the axis of evil. I guess my question is, how many times do we have to prove that these people are blowing up people now? Never mind if they get a nuclear weapon. When do we send them an airmail message to Tehran?
That old Beach Boys song, Bomberan. Bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway.
That was some footage of a town hall way back when, in the 2008 campaign, when John McCain was running to become president. That kind of attitude towards Iran was very disturbing and really kind of part of his entire past of really just warmongering. Just to be honest with you, I mean, like, people would tell you he was a hawk. Oh, he was a hawk. He was probably one of the most, up there with Lindsey Graham, one of the most hawkish people, definitely the most hawkish people in Congress, which was really quite incredible. He did not declare Iraq a failure until he wrote his memoir, which is pretty much on his deathbed, which was a little bit disappointing, just to say the least. Despite recognizing that this regime change, which helped to stabilize the entire region, talking about Iraq here, and resulted in the deaths of well over 1 million people was a mistake, McCain decided to not take the lessons of the colossal failure with him, as I just showed you there, with the town hall footage, and he also continued his career-long desire for war with Iran, with that clip, and by praising Donald Trump's strategy, quote in quotes there, by getting rid of the Iran deal, which was very, very disturbing, and it says much about him and his blatant thirst for war. It seems that McCain's they decided to name the National Defense Authorization Act of 2019, which our military spending was increased again after him, which really gives you an idea of one of the main focuses of his career, which was war and as much of it as possible. Lest we not forget, John McCain also introduced the lovely Sarah Palin into our lives, helping normalize the far right we now know, love, and have ruling over us today, which was really quite problematic. McCain also helped Trump put Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, saying that the Democrats might try and block him, even after McCain himself said during the 2016 campaign that the Republicans would be unified in blocking any Supreme Court nominee Hillary Clinton tried to put up. So, in the end, McCain voted with Trump's administration's stated position 83% of the time, despite knowing that he likely would not be back in Congress again, which kind of shows you his true belief system. I mean, he definitely was a maverick on some issues, and for those issues, he does stand out from the current Republican Party we see and hate today. But the truth is, he was just the same. He was a Republican, but of a bygone era with a little bit more character, with should I say a lot more character and some good and just a basic level of human decency, which we don't find in our politicians, Democratic or Republican today. And for that, so many Americans are going to respect him. And that's just how I think of John McCain. And he's someone who has a very complicated legacy, a bunch of mixed things about him, just to say the least. But the truth is, he's a Republican through and through. He's a very conservative man. He's just one of the same as today's average Republican. But as I said before, a little bit more integrity. Or should I say a lot of bit more integrity, decency, and character. Thank you so much for listening to this special broadcast here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. And just want to take some time to remind you, we are back tomorrow for News Flash and for the full coverage of the news of the day. Please be sure to tune in. Much appreciated.